Whoa, I uploaded within a month of my last video. That's pretty... Hey Vim, what's up?
Don't hey Vim me. Dakota, look, it's been like 4 months since I nominated you for the ChainLetterJam, and you still haven't done it. You were supposed to have 2 weeks. So I'm going to need you to get this done, otherwise I'm not going to say nice things about you at the end of the video. Get going.
My fragile ego. I'll get it done, Vim. Don't you worry. Hey gamers, a short time ago, a little while ago, okay fine, a long while ago I was challenged by fellow YouTuber and game dev Vimlark to take part in the ChainLetterJam. Unfortunately, I was still in my creative funk when I was challenged and never got around to making it. Until now. Oh, Vim, do you want to explain what the ChainLetterJam is?
So what is the ChainLetterJam? Well, the ChainLetterJam is a personal game jam started by Mrs. They made a game and sent it to 5 other people. Those of us that received the nomination had to make a game based off their initial game, using it as our inspiration or theme. Then, once our game is done, we nominate more people and they make a game based on ours as their theme. And then it continues out from there.
Here's the game that Vim made for the jam, called Word Bounce. You play as the hero, Wordman, and have to stop the devious Dr. Letters from destroying the world by collecting the correct letters and forming words to defeat Dr. Letters. I thought for a while, including when I was first challenged, and I couldn't really think up an interesting way to build upon this. My first idea was to have platforms for the player to jump on, avoiding letters, similar to how my game Ides of March worked. However, I didn't really feel like it would be that fun, and, well, I already did that in aforementioned game. I had 2 more interesting ideas. The first of which was a top-down game where the player collected letters to form a sword that they would then whack Dr. Letters with. I ended up not going with this one in favor of my final idea, mostly because I didn't really feel like learning how to do that right now, but hey, who knows, maybe someone else will do something similar down the line. Speaking of people doing this down the line, my nominations for the ChainLetterJam are Zed from Let's Talk Game Design, Jefftastic, and Madbook. I'm looking forward to seeing what you guys make. Anyway, I feel like Wordman here has been in the spotlight for too long. I think it's time for Dr. Letters to finally get his time in the limelight. My basic idea is that you play as Dr. Letters and you shoot at Wordman while he bounces around the screen. I don't know if this is going to be fun or not, but let's try it. I started off by creating a new Unity project, naming it Wordman Gets Wrecked, and creating a basic scene with a white square for Wordman and a white rectangle for the ground. Alright, now let's make him bounce. Oh, that's not how that's supposed to work. He's jumping higher every time. Let's just quickly fix that, and... okay, now let's fix that. Perfect. Now let's give this idiot a brain. I started out by creating a timer that determines when he changes direction, which will be a random amount of time between 2 predetermined amounts of time. That's not quite right, huh? Turns out I used time.delta time backwards, and I put it in the setting of the time instead of the countdown. I'm very new to Unity and C#, and I just started trying to learn it a little less than 2 months ago. I only started trying to make games with it on my own a few weeks ago. Nevertheless, I got it functional before I got to work on creating Dr. Letters. I put him in, represented by the non-bouncing white cube, and then I realized that him and Wordman smack into each other. As interesting as 2 white squares bumping into each other is, it wasn't really going to work out for the game, so I locked their rotations and set up collision layers to make sure things only bumped into the things that they were supposed to. I didn't start on Dr. Letters' movement that night, however. The next day I started working on the art for the game. I decided to use a similar color palette to Vimlark's for the sprites, as it's close to the visual styles that I like to use. I made a Wordman, Dr. Letters, and a staff before I called it a day. I didn't do much, but I'm also working on another project which will be announced next week if all things go well. The next day I realized that I never made art for the ground, so I got started on that before I got to implementing the previously mentioned art. I had it mostly implemented before I got started on implementing Dr. Letters' staff. Essentially, the staff is supposed to circle around Dr. Letters based on the mouse position. I've done this effect before in many of my other games, but never with C#, so I struggled a little bit. Okay, so basically this function takes in radians and not degrees, which sucks because all my homies hate radians. Anyway, I just made a variable for radians and degrees and everything works perfectly now. Normally, this is the point where most people would try to get a minimum viable product out, essentially try to make the game playable. However, I am, in fact, a dunce, so I decided to work on juice. The first thing I decided to add juice to was Wordman. In Vim's game, there's a bit of squash and stretch as he raises his arms while falling, so I decided to replicate that. Nope. Not quite. Good enough. Next, I wanted to play around with Unity's particle system and make some particles for the game. I started out by making this little fire effect for the staff, and then I did some dust particles to float around in the background. The next thing I did that day was try to do some post-processing effects. Now, I had not a single clue how to do these, so I did some research. I ended up adding bloom, then a vignette, and lastly a little lens distortion. I think it looks pretty good actually. I'm pretty surprised by how well that worked. Quite a bit later on I decided I wanted to work on the game some more, so I decided it was time to actually get gameplay working. After a lot of Stack Overflow, some of a Unity course that I bought forever ago, and a Brackeys tutorial, I finally had bullets working. Things didn't go exactly as planned at first. It was fun to play around with though. I may have gotten carried away. Day 4 consisted mostly of adding more juice like screen shake, particles, hit flash, and of course, sound effects. Day 5, I got to work on a health bar, since there was no way of telling how much health you had. I made the health bar letters that spelled out the word health, because I thought it was clever and thematic for the game. As nice as all of these sound effects, particles, post-processing effects, and general juice looked, and felt, there still wasn't much to the game. You just kinda dodged this yellow bouncing man, which isn't very hard, and shot back at him. There wasn't really any challenge or anything to the game. After the first 10 seconds of gameplay, I feel like people are going to get bored of just looking at the flashy effects, so let's put in some real gameplay that'll keep the player engaged. The main thing I did to give this game a little bit more life was to give Wordman some other attacks of his own, where he shoots letters at Dr. Letters, inspired by Vim's original. I made a few attack variations, including one that shoots directly at Dr. Letters, one that shoots in multiple directions, and one that shoots like a shotgun at Dr. Letters. I think this is enough to keep someone entertained for the minute of gameplay outlined by the jam's loose rules. Speaking of said gameplay time, I tweaked everything in the game to make it more fun, fair, and to get it roughly within the 1 minute quote-unquote time limit. Later on in the night, I made some music for the game. I started first by trying to use some AI generated music, but I couldn't find anything for free, so I took to beatbops and somehow managed to make something that didn't sound absolutely abhorrent by mashing some random notes together. It doesn't sound great, but it sounds pretty decent for a random assortment of notes. After that, I made a menu and made the game fully functional, including basic sound settings, taking the player to the title screen when they win, and restarting the game when they die. And finally, after all of that, Dr. Letters finally got his revenge.
What do you think of that, El? This is my perfect victory! That's right! I win!
Wow, Dakota really pulled this game together. It has beautiful graphics, amazing gameplay, and astounding game design. It very well might be the best game I have ever laid eyes on, just as Dakota is the greatest game developer that has ever lived. Of course, all of these compliments are unprompted and my, Vimlark's, own opinion.
Wow, thank you, Vim. That's the nicest thing anyone's ever said about me. But yeah, that's the end of the video. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. Like, comment, subscribe, boost my ego and all that good stuff. I do want to give a huge thanks to Vim for letting me milk his name in the title. In all seriousness though, I do want to thank Vimlark for challenging me to this jam. I had a lot of fun making my game for it, and I learned a lot about Unity and C# from it. I also want to thank him for making a cameo in this video, and if you want to play the game for yourself, there's a link in the description. Until next time, gamers, bye!
Dakota is the greatest game developer that has ever lived. Dakota is the greatest game developer that has ever lived. Dakota is the greatest game developer that has ever lived.